there's actually this book. I don't even remember the author's name. Power versus Force, right? And it made me reflect back on when I was in radio. And when I was selling radio, I would tell people, hey, there's a rule of three. And the rule of three is, and I'm going to make the Power versus Force book relate to this. The rule of three basically in radio would be, if I'm selling you commercials, I would tell you, hey, the first time they hear your commercial, they might take notice, and then again, they might not. Second time, say if they take notice the first time, then they would consider using your service if they wanted to use a particular service when they need it. And the third time, they've decided that from hearing through conditioning, they're going to use your service or buy your product when they need your service or product. So the rule of three. And so it was always a sales tactic for me to convince customers to purchase more advertising. Higher frequency of commercials, the more commercials they purchase, that say $2, $3, $4, $5, even $600 per 60-second commercial, the more commissions I would make. But it's called the rule of three. And I say to them, I said, you have to be frequent. You have to have high frequency so they spend more money. And so the advertising actually worked for many of the people on radio, because the consumers would listen, the listeners would hear it, and they would eventually, act on those commercials, and my customers would be happy and they would get sales. Now, back to the Power versus Force, and I was able to finish 3 degrees in 7.5 years. Actually going back to school and not actually having a degree, dropping out, to finishing 3 degrees, 2 masters in 7.5 years. And basically, they said that it all came down, Power versus Force, it all comes down to conditioning the mind. The first time you hear something, you feel like a baby trying to get up and trying to walk. You feel, you falling over. You're not familiar with it. And then the second time, you get up, or the second time you see information, you start to get to balance yourself. And then the third time that you get up as a baby, you're able to walk. Being able to walk means that you've become familiar with the process, right? And the approach that I took to get 3 degrees in 7.5 years is to familiarize myself a minimum of 3 times with a particular topic or subject matter. Because I realized, just like Power versus Force, that it really wasn't about how smart you were, but it was about how much you were exposed to the information. And the more you were exposed to the information, the more you became familiar, the more digestible the information became to you, and you can not only learn that information, but you can learn topics related to that information even easier, simply by exposure. So the next time someone says to you, hey, you're pretty dumb, because I've heard people call people dumb, or they call you dumb because maybe you don't know something. No, you're not dumb. You're just not familiar with it. So the best way to be smart is just to familiarize yourself with it a minimum of 3 times.